I did pre-watch this last night. This is an actual pre-watch. I watched around 7 minutes of it, I think. I don't even know if we're going to watch that much. Is this guy supposed to be the new, or he's going to be the new prime minister in Canada?
Our productivity is another major problem. Like right now, and that's productivity sounds complicated. It's actually extremely simple. You just take the GDP and you divide it by the hours worked in the country.
So as soon as I hear this, I'm thinking like, uh-oh. There's a right-wing guy, I guess is supposed to be right-wing, coming into Canada who might actually know some econ shit. It's like, oh, okay. Oh, well, fuck. That's great for us in the U.S. because maybe Canada's right wing is not fucking insane. So now people will look in the Canadian region and be like, well, look, their right wing is really smart. So we should have ours do economic policy too. I'm like, okay, wow, okay. It's the first time I think I've ever heard a political person or pundit know what productivity even means. It's like, oh, cool. Okay, well, let's see what he's got to say.
Sounds complicated. It's actually extremely simple. You just take the GDP and you divide it by the hours worked in the country. So American GDP is $80. So for every hour an American worker works on average, he or she produces $80 of GDP. Mm-hmm. In Canada, it's 50. So that's every hour. So that means we have to
do huge things like investments in education and everything, or some type of more specialized worker training to increase the productivity of our workers, right? So I figure it's probably going to be a lot maybe on like the unaffordability of college or education, or how you get like more people trained to be a more productive workforce, right?
Every hour. So that means we have to work 60% more just to make the same amount and have the same level of income to buy food and housing. So that's the... Now, that sounds like a bunch of wonk speak that might seem like it only matters to someone staring at a spreadsheet or a graph or a chart. But in fact, that's reflected in the fact that our 2 million people are lined up at food banks because they can't afford food. And
no, that doesn't really have anything to do with anything that we just talked about. But I guess if you have a less productive labor force, then overall the state of your economy may not be as good. So maybe there would be more people lined up for food banks, but there's not really a direct connection between it. But okay, I don't know. Maybe he's just making a broader argument about the economy. Okay.
80% of youth can't afford homes, and our quality of life and the things we can afford to provide our kids have fallen back so much.
Well,
there's real
pretty stark.
Oh, is quality of life in Canada down, or are we just complaining about how expensive housing is? I would say in Vancouver and Toronto, but I think even the suburbs outside of that are quite expensive too. But like, are we just complaining about cost of housing, or has quality of life in Canada actually receded significantly, or receded at all? But
easily comprehensible statistic. Yeah. And if you work and you produce $80 worth of goods and services in an hour, compared to working and producing 50, obviously that's a substantial shortfall.
Yeah.
So, and is there a starker indicator of the?
Okay, we're at some point we're going to talk about the types of jobs that people work and how to create a more productive workforce, right? Or it's kind of weird that we brought up like productivity and everything, but okay,
Is there a starker indicator of the economic disparity between the U.S. and Canada than that? Or do you think that's the primary statistic?
I mean, I think
so that's just one number, right? That's just like one number. That's not like a diagnosis or an analysis of an entire economy, right?
Housing costs are another one. There was a study out just 10 days ago that has Toronto and Vancouver now by far the most unaffordable housing markets in North America. And so, housing costs are 50% higher in Toronto than they are in Chicago, even though Chicago workers make 50% more money. The same is true between Vancouver and Seattle. Seattle workers make way more than Vancouver workers, but housing is 60 or 70% more expensive in Vancouver. So on all of the measures,
less by a lot.
Yes. By a lot.
Yeah.
And we're paying more.
Paying more by a lot.
Yeah.
I am curious about this. In Canada, and I guess in Europe, in the rest of the world, do you guys have are your cities like our cities, or is this an American thing? So in America, we'll have a city like this will be the city of Chicago. And then this will be another city, and 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 this will be another city. But this is the only actual, this is the city of Chicago, but everybody that lives in any of these like adjoined cities or any of these suburbs all say they're from Chicago. Is that the same in Canada and in Europe as well? Or like if you live in LA, that could mean like 20 different cities, I think. Like, I think people who live in like Brentwood or WeHo or like Santa Monica or Venice or like I think all of those people just say, oh, I'm from LA. I live in LA. You just say that. I'm curious what the rent comparisons are here. Like if Seattle encompasses as many people as Vancouver. Vancouver average rent, Seattle average rent. So 1-bedroom apartment is about $2,300 a month per 539 square feet. And 651 square feet for a 1-bedroom and $2,000 a month in Seattle. So Vancouver seems to be a tad more expensive with less square footage. CAD versus USD? Well, yeah, but they earn and pay in CAD there, so I don't think you would do a currency conversion here, right? I don't think that would make sense. Well, I guess you'd have to look up. Would the St. Louis Federal Reserve have Canada data? Median wages, Vancouver. StatsCan or CMHC is good. Is King County Seattle? What county is Seattle in? King County. King shit. Jesus. Household income includes all the workers in the household, right? Household income includes income of the householder and all other people 15 years and older in the household, whether or not they are related to the householder. Meeting is the point. Okay. Damn. This is a retarded question, but household includes apartments, right? That's not just houses, right? I feel like comparing the median income of all of British Columbia, because like you can live in Vancouver and you can live like way the fuck out in the boonies, no? Like British Columbia has a lot of empty random fuck, but also I don't know how many people like live like up here and shit. Probably not many. So maybe it is a decent estimate, but okay. Just curious for a baseline.
By a lot.
Yes.
By a lot.
By a lot.
Yeah.
And
like
we're paying more.
Paying more by a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And most of that's transpired in the last 10 years.
Yes. And we're paying the difference by accumulating enormous quantities of debt. Our households are by far the most indebted in the G7. When you divide total household debt by GDP, we now have a bigger stock of household debt than our entire economy. We are more indebted as households than the Americans were right before the 2008 financial crisis. And so what we have is...
Okay, I don't think household debt was a player in that financial crisis, but that was a financial crisis that was bad. So, okay, I guess okay.
Model in Canada is we have artificial scarcity imposed by a very heavy and restrictive state, confiscatory state. So that suppresses production. Mm-hmm. But in order to model in Canada is we have artificial scarcity imposed by a very heavy and restrictive state,
okay,
confiscatory state. So that suppresses production. Mm-hmm. But in order to allow for consumption, we print money and borrow money and then flood the economy with that money.
Okay, so that's another problem. So that's the inflation.
Okay. All right. So like he's diagnosing some problems correctly. I think at this point, I think it's pretty easy to say that I have to be careful. I can never grant anything to any of these fuckers. But I think Canada does have some pretty extreme problems when it comes to housing people. Not even just near the cities, but like even if you're quite a ways out of the cities. When I say cities, I'm talking about like 3 of them. But like the housing is pretty expensive. He's identified this concept in economics known as worker productivity, which is the measure of like your economic output per your hours worked, basically. Okay, which is nice. I don't ever usually hear people talk about econ or finance terms when they're in politics. But then is it all really just going to come back to printing money? Is that, or is there more here, or?
Inflationary problem.
Yes.
Now, the problem with inflation, there's many problems with inflation, but one of them is that it particularly punishes people who are thrifty and who save.
Yes.
Right. So inflation punishes the people who forego gratification to invest in the future.
That's right.
Right. So that's a very bad idea.
It's a horrible. Inflation is the single most immoral tax.
I'm really curious who this came from, that inflation is the most immoral tax. I've heard so many people say it. There's some dipshit said this like a few years ago, and I just don't know who it was. Can somebody tell me where this stupid fucking line came from? Tom used this, or he said this to me when I was debating him on the Impact Theory show.
For so many reasons. One, it takes from savers and people who are trying to be responsible, thus making it impossible to be responsible. Right. Because you will, if you refuse to play the inflation game of borrowing money to buy things you can't afford, someone.
I don't know what the inflation game to borrow money to buy things you can't afford. I don't know what it has to do with the inflation game. That just sounds like consumer credit spending on goods that you can probably put off buying. I don't know what that means, but okay.
Else inevitably will, and you won't be able to afford anything. So you ultimately have to act responsibly. It's like Milton Friedman was asked, what would you do with your money in times of inflation? He said, spend it.
Right.
I didn't look this up. What is the source for that Milton Friedman quote? I would be surprised if somebody asked Milton Friedman, what should somebody do in a heavy inflation period? And he's like, oh, spend your money on depreciating or consumable consumer goods. Like your money should be moving. You should be investing it, like buying stock and stuff, for sure, of course. But is that an actual Milton Friedman quote? If it is a quote, it's fucking retarded. It's a stupid. But I have a feeling that it's probably just it's probably an oversimplification of something else. Does anybody have? I really want the source for this. Spend it. Inflation 200. Increase your volume. You're like 40% lower than the video playing. I am loud enough. Fuck you.
Responsibly.
This is really loud though.
Like Milton Friedman was asked, what would you do with your money in times of inflation? He said, spend it.
Right.
Like the first thing you want to do when inflation is out of control is to make sure you get rid of this thing that's losing its value.
But that's good. We don't ever want people hoarding sums of cash. You don't ever, ever, ever want that. It's like, it's the worst thing that you could ever have in well, actually, I don't know. Where's Metal Sword or Metalloid Sword? I always fuck his name up. Would you ever want an environment where citizens are just hoarding money in banks? It just seems like the worst possible thing. Like you always want, spend also means invest, but these people are retards. Yeah, that's what I think if you find that original Milton Friedman quote, it probably meant that. It makes sense, but can you explain why? Because money sitting in a bank account is, I mean, theoretically, I guess the bank can make loans against it, but I don't think the banks are short on deposits to loan against. You want people to do stuff with their money. So they can either buy goods and services, meaning you're going out and you're spending in the economy, which does a whole bunch of things. It increases demand, which helps suppliers, which helps employers and employees that are working jobs. So that's good. Or you can invest in businesses. It gives people capital to have somebody's money and then go out and start a business so that they can also sell things and employ people and everything else. You want like money moving through an economy. Money that just goes and sits in a bank is like, it's just not good. I don't know. You just would never, it's just not a good thing, I don't think.
The second reason it's immoral is it takes from the poor. Because
also this idea, remember how I said it feels like people attach a lot of normativity to economic and finance terms, right?
Times of inflation. He said, have to act or someone else inevitable. If you refuse to play the inflation, thus making it one, it takes, or inflation is the single most immoral tax.
Inflation is not immoral. Inflation is just a thing, okay? Inflation is just a thing. Jesus, when we're talking about like an economic factor or an economic force is immoral. Like, well, slow down, okay? Calm down here, okay? Jesus Christ.
For so many reasons. This thing that's losing its value.
How do you differentiate between healthy savings and money hoarding? I don't know why anybody would ever have more than a couple $1,000s in a savings account unless you literally have to, unless you're about to make a purchase or something. Like, it's just, there are so many highly liquid assets that you can buy and sell so quickly on the market now. I don't know why you would ever just have your money sitting in a savings account.
Value. The second reason it's immoral is it takes from the poor, because the poorest people they do not have the ability to buy inflation-proof assets like gold and real estate and fancy watches and art collections and fancy wines and things.
Oh, okay. So he doesn't have any economic foundation for his statements. He just read a term online and it's all virtue signaling. All of the examples that he's giving here are just like the meme stereotypes, some unique to Canada. They're super obsessed. So you think Americans are about housing and stuff? Canadians feel like a billion times more strongly about it. But like...
Because the poorest people they do not have the ability to buy inflation-proof assets.
Poor people absolutely have the ability to buy inflation-proof assets, but investing in stocks isn't sexy, and it doesn't play into the sexy conservative mythos of gold and real estate and gold and real estate and gold. It has to be real thing. It has to be real things. Gold and real. It has to be gold and real estate. Like everybody can buy a stock. Everybody can invest in like a mutual fund. Like everybody can have I don't know what they're called in Canada, but in the US we have like 401ks and IRAs. Everybody can have these things. You don't have to buy fancy watches or art or real estate.
Like gold and real estate and fancy watches.
Gold, and also you don't buy gold as a hedge against inflation. I don't know why this rumor or meme started because of conservatives and all the sponsors they get, but like who the fuck holds gold as a hedge against inflation? Show me one of these multimillionaires and give me a breakdown of your investment account. One, I doubt any of them manage their own money, which is fine. But two, show me your money managers and I want to know what percentage of your portfolio is held in fucking gold. Give me a break. Nobody fucking holds gold as part of a fucking portfolio. Or it's like 1% because you begged your CPA to, well, I need to...
And art collections and fancy wines and things that go up with or even exceed inflation. So it's a very big wealth transfer from the poor and the working class.
Maybe a retard question, but can you ever decouple inflation from an ever-growing economy? If people generates more and more money, money will inflate sooner or later. No. There are two reasons why a little bit of inflation is good. I'm going to give one answer, but this is what I've understood for a long time. But somebody made a big post on my subreddit explaining that this is actually the incorrect answer. And then I'll give you their answer, but I don't understand their answer as well. So the typical answer is that a little bit of inflation is good because it encourages people to have movement with their money. So you don't sit on your money. You feel like it's going to lose value if it just sits there, and it encourages you to invest it or spend it, which is good. You want people to invest money. You don't want people to just hoard it in a bank account where it does nothing, basically. That's the answer that I've heard given a ton. And I've heard that given, and I understand that it intuitively kind of makes sense to me. But somebody posted on my subreddit and said that actually the reason why you want a little bit of inflation is because, I don't know why this is the case, but once you hit 0% on your inflation rate, recovering from if your currency is deflating, apparently recovering from that from a monetary policy point of view is incredibly difficult. That having 2% inflation and then working around there is much better, because if you are at 0% ordinarily and you go to negative 2%, if your currency begins to deflate, that recovering from that can be catastrophically difficult. I don't know why it's so much different there. Somebody made a longer post on my subreddit and they seemed like they knew what they were talking about, but I don't think I have a good enough understanding of all those terms. But so there's the two answers. The first one is the one that's commonly given that I kind of understand. And the second one was some guy posted on my subreddit saying that's actually not true. So I don't know which one it is, but there you go.
Class to the very, very wealthy. A very small group of people actually get richer.
So the socialist policies that provide goods and services to Canadians, let's say, or denizens of other countries, by printing money, actually punish the poor brutally.
Oh, absolutely.
The socialist policies? What?
In consequence of the inflation that they generate.
Yes, I mean, all the socialist policies in practice redistribute from the working class to the super wealthy.
Also, I love this. I love that the left and the right, the socialists and the commies, and the I can't speak to Canadian. I don't know if this guy's an authoritarian like Trump is or whatever, right? But I love that all of them. Hold on. Has anybody seen this? Does anybody see what he just did there?
The socialist policies in practice redistribute from the working class to the super wealthy in practice. And I can prove that.
Does anybody see what he did there? Does anybody see what's going on here? Oh my God, it's so cute that they've done this. the messaging, because these guys have become so fucking wealthy. Hassan does this all the time as well. It's no longer transferring from the poor to the rich or from the poor to the wealthy. It's from the poor to the ultra rich or from the poor to the ultra wealthy. The millionaires and the 1% are not your enemies. It's the billionaires that are your enemies, because these guys have all been so successful in their grift and they've all made so much money that now they have to convince you that they live your lifestyle. They're basically, they're closer. A guy making, you know, a 7-figure income, his life is way closer to yours than it is to Jeff Bezos or anybody like that. Like, these are your people. They're working class just like you. Fuck, what did I listen to this on stream or was this on my subreddit off stream? Where Hassan says something like, oh God, fuck. It was another income related comment. I don't remember this clip. It was like a minute long and Hassan said something. I was like, yeah, I think I kind of agree with that. And then there was like a 20 seconds and then he said something else like, oh my God, it's so fucking stupid. Fuck, I don't remember what it was. But the left and the right have moved onto that messaging where they always specify. They're always talking about the ultra wealthy. It's always the ultra wealthy, not just wealthy. Because these guys are both. Well, I can't speak to the other guy, but like Jordan Peterson, part of the Daily Wire, has made like probably millions of dollars on his like big right wing grift and everything. So now it has to be the ultra wealthy. It's not us. It's the people that are even richer than us. You know.
Yes, I mean all the socialist policies in practice redistribute from the working class to the super wealthy in practice, and I can prove that again and again and again. In practice,
yeah.
In practice, all the redistribution that happens in these so-called socialist countries ultimately goes from the working class to the super wealthy.
I love the reframing here too. Socialism is about taking from the poor and giving to the rich. Okay, all right.
But just one last thing on it.
What about buying a house, doing it in a year, saving a deposit? Do I want it in stock? If it could get taxed and or go down, my account is at 5% cash. I mean, if you're saving up for something immediately and you want to buy it, then, I mean, save the money. But generally, money sitting in a savings account is always a negative expected value. You're always expecting to lose money. Now, in the short term, it might go up or down, but generally just holding money in a savings account is bad.
Inflation. The final reason why it's so immoral is nobody votes on it. The basic principle of our parliamentary system is the government can't tax what Parliament has not voted.
Now, I don't know how it works in Canada, but in the United States, the only time we have to increase our debt, the government only needs to borrow money when the budget is higher than the tax receipts. So you vote for the members of, well, I was going to say members of Parliament. In the United States, we vote for our congressmen, and then we see what our budget is, and you vote for those leaders. You don't vote on the budget directly. But if the people that you're putting in office are consistently overspending, then yeah, there's going to be more inflation. Everybody in the United States votes for inflation. Everybody loves inflation because we love the spending. We love the thing. It's like when a person is saying like, I don't want to be fat, but they love eating McDonald's and candy bars and sodas and everything all day, every day, constantly. And that's it. And it's like, okay, well, like you can say that you don't want to be fat, but you sure do love the fat lifestyle. And it's the same thing in the United States. Nobody really wants to cut spending. That's why we vote for people. We'll pay lip service to the deficit or the debt, but like like Donald Trump is running the debt up like insanely. He did more than any other president before him. So where is this deficit concern at, you know?
The people must, no taxation.
Has Trudeau done anything wrong? I can't speak to Canadian politics at all. I truly can't tell you. I just don't know. I hear a lot of bad things about Trudeau, but I don't know if that's just like the online memes or what, because he was the prime minister for quite a while. The only concrete thing I'd ever heard people complain about is that apparently he promised to bring ranked choice voting or something and didn't do it or something like that. But I don't know. I don't know enough to really say. I can't give you an accurate assessment of his prime ministership. Savings accounts are above inflation. Why is it expected to lose money? So I don't believe savings accounts will ever pay you more than inflation. There are advanced savings accounts that I think are FDIC insured. I think money market deposit accounts. Yes. I think money market deposit accounts, might beat inflation generally. But ordinary savings accounts won't. Typically, you need to be invested in the market for that or have your money in other places. Fun thought experiment. What is the most retarded and evil economic policy you think you could actually convince Trump to enact? I don't know. I don't have to think about it. I did think about this yesterday. This would be a really fun thought experiment to run through with a conservative. Is there any possible way that Trump could die where you wouldn't think it was a conspiracy? And I think the gut response would be, well, of course. But then if you were to run through and ask them, I don't think there would be any answer that would be satisfactory to over half of them. So like, okay, you said, yeah, so if he had like a heart attack, let's say that tomorrow morning it's announced that Donald Trump was found dead and it seemed to have been a heart attack. Do you believe that he legitimately died? Would you believe that? I don't believe that the answer would ever be, I don't think they would own up to any of that. What if you see him get hit by a car and we investigate the person, there's no connect, like, would you agree that it was like an accident or, yeah, I don't know.
Without representation, right? But no one ever votes to have the money printing happen. And so the inflation is adopted secretly, and you blame the grocer because groceries are more expensive, or your local gas station because gas is more, or your realtor because house. When in fact, it was actually the government that bid up all of those things with money printing, and you didn't even know about it. Mm-hmm. So it is silent. It's a silent thief that takes from the poor and gives to the richest people.
I don't like this obsession with the money printing stuff because it's so nebulous. And it's so hard to like have a good opinion on because nobody really knows how monetary policy works, that it allows you to escape all talk and all responsibility when it comes to actually being in government, like crafting good policies or talking about good policies to help your society. And that's just very annoying to me.
And it destroys the working class. And that's why I want to crush inflation. We need a policy that seeks to just to stop inflation at all costs.
Okay, so what would you do to stop inflation?
Well, we stop the money printing.
Like, that is bad economics. We need to stop inflation at all costs. First of all, there are times where inflation is preferable to the alternative, which might be like a massive economic recession or depression. And two, is he talking about like 0% inflation, or what do you mean? Like, I don't even know what we're talking about here. And also, three, again, I don't know if Canada's monetary system is similar to the United States, and that you guys have like a central bank that enjoys somewhat of an independent relationship from the parliament, but it's not in the purview, at least in the United States, of the government to, it's not in the purview of the government to do anything about inflation. That's just not the government's job. That's the job of your banking system. So I don't even know what he means here. Now, if he just wants to say that we should balance our budget or whatever, then fine, sure, balance your budget. But like, the target is not inflation. The target should just be, having a balanced budget, I guess.
We need, and the money printing is just a means to fund deficit spending. Mm-hmm. Governments borrow.
Define the deficit, for people.
So basically, the deficit is the difference between what the government spends and what it brings in.
Mm-hmm. It's usually calculated on a yearly basis.
That's
deficit.
Right.
Yep. And
I love Peter's little add-ons here. Like, I know a little bit about this.
Debt?
Well, the debt is just the accumulation of the deficits.
Right.
So the deficit right now is $62 billion. And
I thought it had a ceiling of
41 billion, yeah. Right.
Wasn't that a ceiling?
Yeah.
It's not, eh?
I guess not. Mm-hmm. Look, there are very real present-day consequences for that. Deficits increase the money supply. Central banks effectively facilitate that increase in the money supply, and that causes inflation. And it's why I have a buddy whose family moved here from Italy back in 1973. His father worked paving roads, and his mother made sandwiches in a senior's home. They were able to pay off their home 10 minutes from Parliament Hill in 7 years.
Like, this has nothing to do with inflation or monetary policy. You're talking about such a different environment here. You're talking about something that's so different in so many ways. The sizes of these cities, the average productivity of your worker, the amount of education required to accomplish a particular thing, like your labor force at the time and the composition of labor force, the demand for different types of work. Like, there's so many other factors at play here that to use this example, like, well, look at how much better things were before some inflation. It's just like,
right.
Their grandchildren wouldn't be able to save up a down payment for that home in 15 years, and they will be university educated with all the advantages of having been here 2 decades. That is the consequence of the money supply growing vastly quicker than the stuff that money buys. So we have to do is stop growing the money supply and start growing the stuff money buys, right? Produce more energy, grow more food, build more homes. So we have to unleash the free enterprise system to produce more stuff of value. And this is where we have to remove the artificial scarcity that the government is imposing on the population. Let's incentivize our municipalities.
He keeps saying the artificial scarcity. I don't think I listened this far. What does he mean by that? Is he just talking about zoning for homes, or is he talking about something else? Or
municipalities to grant the fastest building permits in the world to build homes.
Okay.
And you have a plan for that in principle?
Yes. I mean, I'm going to say to the municipal governments, they either speed up permits, cut development charges, and free up land, or they will lose.
So like when he says this here, and I'm curious if it's the same in Canada, I feel like Canadians are quite American, right? I don't ever hear any conservative Canadians, and maybe some of them say this, dismiss it. I never hear them talk about high density housing. It sounds like what they're always trying to do is just get more and more and more and more and more suburbs built out, further and further and farther, the suburban sprawl. Do Canadian conservatives ever talk about high density housing, or is it always just, no, we just need to build more and more housing? Does that ever happen, or?
They either speed up permits, cut development charges, and free up land, or they will lose their federal infrastructure money. So they will have a powerful carrot and stick incentive to speed up home building.
And
Tassie was talking about alternatives to savings for someone who's squeamish on investing. CDs are good long-term investments, but if people get scared, if they can't access their money now, you should not be squeamish on investing in the market. If you are, then you need to dramatically revamp your understanding of the market, or you need to stop taking financial advice from political pundits. They don't know anything about finance. In fact, I wouldn't take advice from financial advisor people on YouTube that have become political. Because as we've seen, unfortunately, as much as I love both of those guys personally, on the Iced Coffee Hour podcast, financial people that start to do political commentary also no longer give good financial advice. Your broad investments in the market, at least in the United States, this is for the US, I can't speak to all your fucked up countries, okay? The United States are always a good bet. And when they become not a good bet, then shit is so catastrophic. The least of your worries is going to be whether or not the allocation of your portfolio and how much is invested in your money market deposit account versus your treasury bonds versus your CDs and your gold and your stocks and your whatever else. So anything leaning right is bad in Destiny's eyes. Mainframing. Notice how I'm like giving substantive criticisms to every single thing this guy is saying, and I'm not just saying right, bad. Can you not hear anything I'm saying?
And the percentage of a new house price that's a consequence of government taxation and regulation?
Well, in Vancouver, it's 60%.
60%. Now, does that include the land and the house?
Yes.
Incentive structures of almost all financial advisors are misaligned. I'd never trust any unless they charge a flat fee. Okay, you don't need a financial advisor, my dude. No one in here needs a financial advisor. Open an account on Fidelity or Vanguard or whatever, and just go buy fucking, what's the meme thing? Is it SPY? I don't know. Just buy these big funds or whatever. They just track the market. That's all you need. You don't need a financial advisor for your $12,780, stock account. Just buy whatever. Just buy this shit. No, you made a broad claim that states that anyone with right-leaning or political takes you don't have is wrong. I said that anybody with right-leaning political takes are wrong. You don't understand, I fight with commies as well, right? Like I listed Hassan and these guys as well when I talked about people using tactics to talk about the super wealthy instead of just the wealthy, right? VU equals SPY but less management fees. SPY has management fees? Yeah, most of my money's in this shit. And I bought this shit because somebody tried to talk me into it, but I don't even know if it's good. I'll go look at it. I just said don't listen to people who give financial advice who are political. I didn't say right wing. Yeah, if they're super left wing, you shouldn't take advice from them either. All of these people are giving you financial advice from a political position. They don't know anything about finance. There's no reason to do that. What about individual stocks like Meta, CrowdStrike, etc.? Those seem like good buys. If you want to buy individual stocks, that's fine. That's not investing, and that's not like responsible money management. That's like gambling money. If you want to go and gamble, that's fine. Have fun, do that. But if you're buying individual stocks, you're not saving your money in a responsible way. You're gambling, and you're probably losing. If you're investing money, if you've got money that you have for investing, then you're buying broad funds. You are never beating the market, statistically speaking.
Yes, that includes everything. So I'll tell you how they calculate it. CD Howe took the...
How much on average do you put away? You can say percentage. Me? I don't know. Probably like 90% of my money. I don't spend my money on anything though. I just sit in my home all day and scream at people.
Yes, that includes everything. So
I don't want to fight with anybody. I'm not trying to fight. I swear to God, okay? I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm not trying to fight with anybody. And you don't have to agree with me. I encourage all of you to do your own research, okay? But Somebody said there are some stocks that have decent dividends. Do not listen to anybody that gives you financial advice when it comes to investing if they're talking about dividends. You don't have to worry about dividends. That doesn't matter, okay? We're not investing in the stock market in the 1980s, all right? No one cares about dividends. Invest in broad funds. That's all you need to do. Fuck dividend investing, whatever cringe shit that is, unless you're on some like very peculiar tax strategy or something that in that case you're beyond any advice I'm giving anyway. But fuck dividends, okay?
I'll tell you how they calculate it. CD Howe took the cost of compared the cost of building a home to the cost of buying a home.
Yeah.
And he said,
buying individual stocks fits the definition of investing in every sense. It's just more risky. I consider investing when you're putting your money in things that are very likely to go up. Definitionally, what do you call the institutional investor versus not residential, not consumer? Oh my God, what's the word I'm looking for? Investor. You've got institutional investors. Now you've got these new. It starts with an R. No, it doesn't. Fuck, I forgot the term. What am I thinking of? Retail. Oh, it is. Okay, retail investor. Definitionally, if you're buying individual stocks, that is always expected to be a negative trade over a long volume for an individual. Individuals are never, ever, ever on volume ever expected to beat the market. It's always an EV minus trade. You should just be investing in broad funds. Dave Ramsey is actually delusional. He says you can easily beat the market. Sometimes I hear Dave Ramsey say things that are a little bit like, when I say ideologically driven, I mean like he's got like a financial ideology. I'm like, I don't know about that, but I don't think I've ever heard him say anything like super wrong. I seriously doubt Dave Ramsey's ever said you can easily beat the market, but I would have to see a video for that.
So what's the gap between those two things? So they added up land, labor, profit for the developer.
Does that include the land and the house?
Yes, that includes everything. So
I'm illiterate. What are broad funds? Yeah, so when I look at the stock market, okay, let's say that I look at a company like NVIDIA, okay? So NVIDIA is a stock. When I buy shares of NVIDIA, I'm getting some ownership in the NVIDIA corporation, okay? Now, markets, even though they tend to be correlated, meaning they all kind of tend to move like up and down together, I think broadly speaking, some markets can go up a lot and then down a lot and whatever. Some markets can be like more stable over time. Other markets sometimes are inversely correlated and there's weird shit, whatever. But like on the aggregate, meaning when you add all of these things together, okay, all of them kind of look like this, all right? This is how they all look on the aggregate. If you add all of them together. However, if you're an individual and you go into a stock market, okay, well, fuck, okay, so what, do I need to buy one of every stock? Well, maybe not. So for instance, I believe that the S&P 500, I think is highly weighted in tech, meaning tech companies overrepresent the companies listed on the S&P 500. So if I were to buy one stock from every company in the S&P 500, is it really a diverse portfolio if I have like one stock from a company worth $5 billion and one stock from a company worth $5 million? Now, a company that small would never be listed on the S&P 500, but right? So there's a whole idea of like, well, how do you diversify a portfolio in a way that accurately is pegged on like the aggregate of the entire market? This is a very, 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 it's a somewhat complicated thing to do. You don't have the money to do that. You don't have the time to do that. You don't want to spend the research. So instead of all this, okay, I would rather go to a group of people who know how to balance an investment in the market. And I'm going to say, okay, listen, you guys are all, the percentages to have like a balanced portfolio. I want to buy stock in your investment strategy. So what you do is you go to these these are exchange traded funds. Actually, let me explain this, then I'll look it up and I'll see how wrong I am. Because I've never actually looked up the definition of an ETF before. But I'm pretty sure basically what an ETF is a bunch of guys that know what they're doing is they'll say, okay, these are all the things that we need to invest in. We're going to get a bunch of people to give us their money, and then we're going to allocate all of their money into these investments. And then as all of these investments rise, we're going to return, we'll either reinvest it or we'll return that money to the people that are investing in us. So you're basically paying somebody else to make broad investments in the market, and those broad investments in the market are these types of funds, basically. A fund, I think a fund is always like a collection of investments or securities or whatever, basically. An exchange-traded fund is an investment fund that holds multiple underlying assets and can be bought and sold on an exchange, much like an individual stock. Yes, okay. So when you buy into things like these funds, it automatically diversifies your portfolio, if that makes sense. Like if I were to have one stock from 10 different companies, that would be less diversified than having 10 stocks in an exchange-traded fund, assuming it's a fund that's like balanced or whatever. What is a hedge fund? I don't know if there's a formal definition for a hedge fund, but I know they tend to be more exclusive. You might have a higher barrier to entry. They might be more specialized. Like you have a hedge fund that's invested in just trying to, invest in energy markets or some particular type of commodity or asset or whatever. I think usually a hedge fund promises you that they'll beat the market. People invest in hedge funds because they think they can get an edge on the market. They might have significantly different risk profiles. So you might have a hedge fund that could return a lot of money or lose a lot of money. Stuff like that just depends. The S&P 500 is just the 500 largest companies. It does not include mid and small cap companies. I'm trying to think if it's just the 500 largest or if there's another selection criteria in there. How are S&P 500 selected? S&P 500 is calculated by adding each company's float-adjusted market capitalization. In order to be included in the S&P 500, we have seen certain requirements, including achieving certain market cap, at least 45 bill, having a majority of its shares in public hands, and being a public company for at least a year. Investor want to invest in S&P 500. I don't know. Okay, I think this might be broadly true, sure. How much research did you do to learn so much about finances and the economy? I got a bachelor's in business analytics, and I'm damn near confused half the time you speak on things like this. What business analytics... there's like a lot of different parts of things that seem the same, but they aren't. That was a really vague statement. Like sometimes people say like, I have a bachelor in econ, but I don't know anything about finance, because finance and econ are like two totally separate things. Or if you do like business analytics, there might be a little bit of crossover with like finance, but I would imagine there's probably almost nothing to do with economics. You might learn like a really like basic econ thing, or like have a really, really basic econ class. But yeah, just Wikipedia everything. That's all you do, bro. Keep wikiing. Wiki all the things. It feels like the major companies nowadays compared to before have gotten so broad in terms of product reach and what markets they operate in, plus the ability to buy up other companies. It seems much less likely for companies like Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon to have a big downfall as they are just so diversified. Yeah, true. Which has its pros and its cons, but... What about global funds? Do you think they're worth it? I don't know. Like I said, people told me to buy, I think VT was the fund they recommended. I feel like it's underperformed compared to my other shit. I don't know if global funds are good or not. Don't ask me that. I can't give you advice on like what is the best. I just buy broad funds that track US markets. And I know that that's better than putting your money in other like cash equivalent things or trying to gamble on your own for stocks. I can tell you that. But in terms of like specific market funds or like global funds, I don't know enough.
So I'll tell you how they calculate it. CD Howe took the cost of compared the cost of building a home to the cost of buying a home.
Yeah.
And he said, what's the gap between those two things? So they added up land, labor, profit for the developer, materials, and they compared that to the sale price. And they found the gap was $1.2 million. So that's $1.2 million of extra cost above and beyond the materials, the labor, the land, and the profit for the developer. So where's that going? Well, the answer
is he going to say that's going to inflation or that's going to government regulation?
Is development charges, sales taxes, land transfer taxes, right. the delays in getting the permit, time is money, the consultants, lawyers, accountants, lobbyists that the developer has to hire in order to get the approval. So in other words, we're spending twice, in Vancouver, we spend twice as much on bureaucrats.
Destiny says don't do both. He says it's bad practice to do both. That's my point, haha. Wait, what? I'm not mad about it. I know there's risk, but saying it's a bad idea to leave those funds in a savings account with guaranteed return is just wrong. Haha. Well, it's guaranteed over a period of time, right? There's some period of time that on a long position, you're basically guaranteed, unless something catastrophic happens, to make more, to beat inflation and to beat whatever you'd earn in a savings account on your money. That's why I said earlier, if you need access to money like now, or if you have to like buy something in, like a couple months that you're saving up for, then it's probably okay to go to like cash equivalent things. So like a money market deposit account or just a fucking savings or checking account if you want, I guess. But Yeah. When you say buy into SPY and boo, you mean VOO? Can you explain what they mean? Those are exchange traded funds, meaning that you're just buying stock into other people that know how to invest in the market safely, basically.
Than we do on all other things combined to build a home. More money goes to bureaucrats than goes to the carpenters, electricians, and plumbers who build the place. And to add insult to injury, those tradespeople who build homes can't afford to live in them.
Right.
I mean, it is so. What we need to do is slash the bureaucracy. And I'm going to say to the mayors, you're not getting federal infrastructure money until you slash your development charges, speed up your permits. I'm going to take the federal GST off new homes under a certain limit and encourage the provinces to do the same. But we've got so much land. We should have the most affordable housing in the world.
Destiny doesn't know that everyone below the age of 30 has a high yield savings account. No one is opening a savings account with less than 3.5% APY guaranteed. Why would you want 3.5% APY guaranteed when you can get a historic 7+% return in the stock market, though?
It should be dirt cheap because we have the most dirt. We just need to get the government out of the way. The same goes for our resource sector. I mean, why is it that we're still importing oil when we've got the world's third biggest supply? Why is it we can't export our natural gas overseas?
You mean like to Germany and Japan, even when they ask?
Exactly.
And are offering multi-decade contracts at distressed prices because they're so desperate for energy.
Good one.